Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host today. We're going to be talking with Ford Seeman, founder of Forest Founders, which is a subscription tree planting organization based in New Jersey. It's at forestfounders.org. And basically you sign up, you give $10 or $20 a month, and the Forest Founders plants trees on a regular basis to offset your carbon footprint. Ford, welcome to the show. How are you today? I know you're recovering from the hurricane in upstate New York. How are the trees doing?
Oh man, it's sad. I was going to a doctor's appointment the day after the storm hit, and there were just so many roads that were closed down. The trees were not doing well. The Lorax would not have been pleased.
Well, you had some trees damaged in your yard. You were telling me. Are you going to replant?
A lot of them were actually ash trees that had died from the emerald ash borer that kind of tore through the area. It's sad. We're not going to have any more ash trees in the country, in the next year or two. Natural cycle of the forest. We've got little trees that are going to grow big and strong to replace the big trees. But we do not have any plans as of yet to replant.
Well,
however, I also feel like we do quite a bit of planting in other places, so maybe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, now I wanted to have you on. You have pointed out that individuals need to take action, and COVID-19 has created some astounding statistics, which in the short term are very encouraging about what happens when millions or billions of people change their personal habits to the level of CO2 that's emitted into the atmosphere. So Nature has reported that between May and April 2020, CO2 levels were down approximately 17% across the globe. Now, we haven't seen updates to that, but do you think it's possible to keep these declining emissions in place, or are we going to go back to carbon as usual?
Well, I think you started to see a little bit more carbon as usual after China got out of their lockdowns. They ramped up the economy, and had more carbon emissions than they usually have, just to kind of catch up for their GDP's sake. I think the statistics usually come out in May because that's kind of when, the parts per million carbon peak in our atmosphere. Another statistic I had seen that was kind of scary is that this year we hit a new record, hitting 417 parts per million, up from a year prior at 414. The issue is, even though we're down, 17% year over year, our environment just doesn't have the same capacity to deal with the extra carbon that's in the atmosphere. So, our carbon sinks are faltering. And there would have to be a really drastic reduction in order for us to actually see some forward momentum.
Well, now, the forests are one of our primary carbon sinks globally. And let's talk about Forest Founders and your tree planting membership program. First off, where are you in terms of the number of trees you've planted at this point?
So we crossed the 40,000 threshold recently. Our program's kind of slow moving. It's gathering steam, but at a slower pace than I had initially hoped. Part of that is because we don't do any, mailer advertising or anything like that. It's a lot of word of mouth. And we're also in the process of actually upgrading our services. We're creating a marketing program that will act as an incentive program for businesses, so that they can, have businesses plant trees on their behalf for their consumerism. So we're growing pretty steady. I'm happy with the progress, but of course, the more trees, the better.
Well, now, obviously, one of the actions that you might suggest to our listeners to take, in terms of reducing their carbon footprint is to join Forest Founders. But what are the other efforts that you think individuals can take today to make a difference globally?
As part of the research we were doing, we asked ourselves that same question. We were coming up with our program. And, a lot of people are under the impression they can take shorter showers, bike to work, try to use mass, public transportation. But, at the end of the day, they're kind of half measures. I think that one of the best things that you could do is be a lot more conscientious about what you eat, where it comes from. Having a carnivorous diet is actually one of the largest carbon. It's one of the largest carbon emitting industries in the world. You wouldn't believe how much carbon is emitted, to get a beef cattle to the butcher. Vegetarians have a much lower carbon footprint. You can reduce your carbon footprint by 40 to 70% depending on your diet.
Now, it's funny because I can hear the chainsaws in the background cutting.
Oh, it's killing me. It's killing me, Mitch.
And that's just, in a lot of ways, it's the counterpoint to what we're talking about. But what are you doing to reduce your own footprint and Forest Founders' CO2 footprint?
Yeah, Forest Founders, as I mentioned, we don't do any mailing advertisements. The amount of junk mail, the level that it's attained in recent years is just astounding. Considering we have such easy ways of getting information like email, the fact that it still exists is pretty archaic, I think. A lot of the things that could be done by individuals won't necessarily be done until they're enforced at a government level. I think that, the government tells us a lot of things about our lives. Obviously, right now, we're in kind of a period where we don't want to listen. Not everybody's wearing masks. But, they could easily come out and say no more junk mail, no more solicitations by the, USPS. But there's always going to be pushback against that kind of governmental intervention.
Now, it's interesting, governmental intervention on the one hand, but individual initiative and leadership within the local economy and local political levels is critically important to how we reshape this environmental footprint from the bottom up. And as a grassroots organization, Forest Founders is doing a lot of outreach to individual consumers. And you mentioned that you're going to use you're going to add the capability for business to add offsets to the transactions they offer consumers. Is there a way for companies, for lack of a better word, or organizations, to pull together to create a system that consistently offsets CO2 as we consume stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I think the best example of that that I've seen recently has been Microsoft's new pledge that by 2030, they'll be carbon neutral across the board. And by 2050, they're going to actually go carbon negative to the point where they reduce the entirety of their impact for the whole time that they've been in existence since, I believe, the 1980s. So that's
1977, actually.
So since the 70s. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, and they go beyond just the first two levels of what people consider carbon output to the fact that they're even talking about the carbon emissions from the vendors that they use. They're going to go even to that further extent. So that's very satisfying to see a huge company like that really set the groundwork for other companies to kind of come in and emulate that.
Well, so that just this last week, Google did the largest green bond raise in history, and so have billions of dollars to begin to really accelerate their path to net zero as well. Now, you also, obviously we're talking about business and business's capability to change things. You also run an incubator of businesses called Righteous Causes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Righteous Causes we look at as kind of a stopgap measure. There are a lot of people with great ideas. You just don't have, the friends and family available for the friends and family round that are required to get larger businesses off the ground. What we've done is we've created an environment where entrepreneurs can fill out a profile on our site. And then if we accept it that we think it's a viable business plan, angel investors can actually see them and basically pledge 10, 20, or 30 grand for startup funds. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they go out there, they're green behind the ears, but, they got tons of excitement about their business idea. They go out to these angel investors who crucify them. They want the pro forma. They want the pitch deck. These are things that not everybody has the capability or the experience to put together. And that's where a lot of, hopes and dreams kind of die right there on the operating table. What we do is we have a huge network of consultants and providers that can provide almost any type of service for where, there's just a lack of knowledge. So we come in, we kind of help them polish up their plan, look at the viability of it, give them business coaching, life coaching, so they have the right attitude going in. And instead of expecting the founders to pay for it, we help them actually find the funds and get angel investors to do a little bit of the funding, even on this smaller level. In exchange, the angels then get, a small convertible note for however much money they put into the program.
Right.
And they also receive first right of refusal into the first round.
So for our listeners, there was a little bit of business jargon there. Let me quickly explain that. That means that convertible note is a loan that if they don't get paid back, converts into stock. And that right of first refusal means that when the company does raise money, those people get the opportunity to invest first. Now, really interesting. So what you're really doing is kind of a curated crowdsourcing approach to developing socially and environmentally responsible business. Do you think that this kind of socially responsible approach is the future of business?
Yeah. We had basically, it was a dichotomy where we had two options people thought of when going into business. It could either be bleeding heart for the people in the form of a nonprofit, or, it could be a for-profit, which puts profit over people, where ultimately everything is about the bottom line and the shareholders run the roost. I think that both are kind of dangerous. We need a hybridized version, which the benefit corporation kind of fills that void, where it's not people over profits or profits over people. It should be people and profits. We're seeing a lot of companies that are coming around to this philosophy, and we're also seeing that companies that embrace it, have better marketing stories. When you have something that you stand for, people really resonate with that.
Now, I've read a couple of articles, interviews with you from the past, and your background is very entrepreneurial. You've done a number of different things, worked as a restaurant manager, co-founded an energy drink company. Why trees?
Well, I was a general manager of a restaurant when my wife got pregnant, and I remembered back to the lessons learned from my mother. I wanted to make sure I left a legacy that my daughter could be proud of and really make a difference. The largest issue that I think we face as a species is this carbon emission crisis. It's something that we need to address as soon as possible. It's like the ancient Chinese proverb, when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Second best time is right now. We are living in the right now. This is when we need to address it, because if it keeps spiraling out of control, there are going to be some dangerous feedback loops that are created, and this is very quickly going to be out of our control. So with that in mind, I tried to create a simple way for people to become carbon accountable. I figured a subscription program could be part of that. And then from that, it just kind of spiraled. Right now, we're working on another program, as I'd mentioned earlier, that allows businesses to plant trees on their consumers' behalf in a gamified, engaging way to help with customer loyalty, but also help businesses that want to do the right thing by the environment tap into something that's easy, that's a third party, where they don't really have to change their business plan, and they can tap into existing revenue streams or line items, I should say, on their books. We're basically repurposing marketing and customer acquisition costs to allow any business to become environmentally conscientious.
So just, a little background. If you plant a tree, the first couple of years, it's going to do about 13 pounds of CO2 sequestration, but at a mature level, it's about 48 pounds a year. So, it still takes several hundred trees to offset the most sustainable person's CO2 output. What amount of tree planting do you think is viable as business starts to embrace this carbon offset approach to their emissions?
Yeah, I think The term carbon offset is very often misunderstood. I'm not a huge fan of carbon offsets. I feel like it kind of gives bad actors carte blanche right to continue doing what they're doing because they're buying these carbon offsets from people doing the right thing. I don't think that we should use it as an easy out. That's why we make sure that, there's no carbon offset really associated with our program. We don't try to get credit and then sell off those credits for planting trees.
Understood.
And our partner, we partner with the National Forest Foundation. So the trees that we plant through this program, they're planted within our national park system, national forest system. Those are trees that are not going to be logged for profit. They're not going to be pelletized to run, wood stoves during the winter. These are trees that are really going to sequester that carbon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so fair point. Let's talk about it in terms of their ability to scale. So how big can forest founders get given your current geographic footprint in terms of your places to plant, or do you need to expand globally? And would it be a good idea to put money overseas in carbon sinks like the Amazon?
Yeah, 100%. I think for the legitimization of our program, it's important that we work with programs like the National Forest Foundation so that people really trust and know where the trees are going. But when we get to a certain point of success, this is a program that will absolutely have to reach over the pond, plant in other places in the world. The UN has some incredible tree planting projects that they sponsor. And obviously from being overseas, the cost of planting the trees are a little bit cheaper than the cost of planting trees here in the U.S. We are very much looking forward to branching out, but I think it's going to take us hitting a certain level of viability. We really want to be a household name by the time we kind of reach out across the pond, just because I feel like people are a lot more comfortable planting in their backyard, and they also feel more of a connection to it. But we're definitely looking forward to increasing our impact. Some of these UN programs can plant trees for as little as 25 cents a tree. Mm-hmm. That would maximize our ability to plant trees by up to 400%, which would be pretty incredible.
So let me bring this back to where we started, and that is the disruptions that we're experiencing right now. COVID is, in a way, sort of a preview of what happens when you have true disastrous global warming. There will be interruptions in food supplies, in the way we do everything, and there may be forced migration of people from a lot of major cities that are on coastlines. As you look at where we are today and how COVID has disrupted life, what do you want to warn people that they need to be aware of as we move forward into the 2020s and toward 2030 when we need to achieve a carbon success?
One trend that I've seen has been divesting in fossil fuels. BlackRock recently came out that they were going to do it, and I was quoted in an article saying that it was a little, too late, and it was kind of a fluff piece, because in all actuality, right now the energy generation between fossil fuels and renewable energy sources are at parity. So it's not, it's not really a sacrifice for them. It's almost good business. If they had done it 10 years ago, it would have been better for the planet. Now, it seems like we don't want to make changes until they're hefted upon us. I feel like, we've been going into the office as an archaic tradition because once upon a time, that's where you were most productive. You got the best work done. But now we've seen this transition with people working from home and a lot of offices not having plans to open up anytime soon. People can be just as productive working from home without all the extra travel and everything else that produces carbon emissions. I think that we need to kind of rethink about, the tools that we have at our disposal and figure out how to maximize our reduction in emissions now before it's too late.
Yeah, from my perspective, and I've been involved in technology for 35 years, we finally are being forced to do the digital transformation we've been threatening to for a long time. But a lot of organizations aren't comfortable with the decision to trust people to work wherever they are. So I sure hope that organizations like Righteous Causes and Forest Founders can help people see that. Ford, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, of course. It was great being part of this podcast. I hope you have me back in a little while and we can discuss some updates and kind of where we are with our two endeavors here.
We would love that. And I hope that the trees in your backyard do well as we come out of the hurricane. So, Ford Seeman, thanks very much for joining us today. Ford Seeman is the founder of Forest Founders, which is a subscription program that allows you to plant your own trees through the organization. Check it out at forestfounders.org. And we'll be back with another episode of Earth 911 Sustainability in Your Ear soon. Take care. Be green.